Hare Krishna, good morning dear devotees from Sri Dham, Jagannath Puri. This is our morning adventures in Srimad Bhagavatam, and today we have a special discussion. We're continuing, this is session 42, and our discussion about meeting in Kurukshetra, and our eighth part of that about Uddhava meeting Nanda and Yashoda. So we'll say a few prayers to begin. Goragraganya gana go to goloruharam Gauranga Gudatama Gopyada Kopa Briksham Gopalagada Ratidam Yati Singha Gora Govinda Deshi Kavaram Satatam Namami Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Shaiva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Vedi Ramayanesh Chaiva Purane Bharate Tata Adavante Chamadye Chahari Sarvatra Giyate Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yad Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Paramananda He Madhava Padunga Luchi Makaranda Se Makaranda Panakori Anande Bolo Hari Hari Harinka Name Vandavela Parikoribe Chakadola Se Chakadolanka Paraye Manamo Rahu Nirantare Manamo Nirantare Rahu Ha Krishna Boli Jiva Jao Ha Krishna Boli Jao Jiva Moteu Dada Radha Dava Moteu Dada Radha Dava Moteu Dada Radha Dava Dharma Projita Kaita Votro Tipaparamos Matsanam Sutam Vedyam Vastava Matta Vastu Shivadam Tapatrayon Mulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamune Krite Kim Vaparayishvara Sadyo Hridyavarudite Tukritibi Shushu Shubhistakshanat Nigamako Pataro Galitam Phalam Shukamukadamitra Dravasam Yutam Pibata Bhagavatam Rasamalayam Muhoroho Rasika Bhuvi Bhavuka Anarto Pasamam Sakshad Bhakti Yogam Adhoksaje Lokasya Janito Vidvams Chakri Satvata Samhitam Yasham Vaishiyamanayam Krishne Paramapurushe Bhaktirudpadyate Pumsa Shoka Moha Vayapaha Srimad Bhagavatam Puranamamalam Yad Vaishnavanam Priyam Yasmin Paramahamsamekam Amalam Gyanam Padam Giyate Tatra Gyana Vairagya Bhakti Sahitam Naiskaramyama Viskritam Touch Trinvan Supaten Vicharana Pado Bhaktya Vumuchin Nadaha Arto Yam Brahma Sutra Nambada Tarta Vinyanaya Gayatri Bhashyarupo So Vedanta Paribrimita Sarva Vediti Hasanam Sadam Sadam Samudritam Sarva Vedanta Sadam Hi Srimad Bhagavatam Ishyate Tadrasamrita Triptasya Nanyatya Svedvachi Kuchit Krishna Bhakti Rasa Swarup Shri Bhagavatam Tate Veda Shastra Hoite Paramamahatva Chari Veda Upanishade Jata Kichu Hoya Tara Arta Lena Vyasa Korila Sanchaya Jai Sutre Jai Ruk Vishaya Vachana Bhagavate Sehiruk Shloke Nibandana Jivira nistada lagi sutra koilo byasa mayavadi bhashya shunile hoya sarvanasa Jaho Bhagavata Pada Vaishnavirastane Ekanta Shayakaro Chaitanya Charane Bhagavata Jinamane Sejavana Sama Tada Sasta Ache Janme Janme Prabhu Jama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Good morning from Sridham Jagannath Puri. This is our 42nd session. We're calling Meeting in Kurukshetra, in our 8th part of Uddhava meets Nanda and Yashoda. So in some of our previous sessions, we were speaking from a lecture Srila Prabhupada gave in 1973 in Los Angeles, and he spoke in a very, very sweet way. Prabhupada said those who are thinking to first of all analyze Krishna, to ascertain whether or not he is God, they're not first-class devotees. But those who have spontaneous love for Krishna, they're first-class devotees. Prabhupada says, so how can we study Krishna? It's not possible. Therefore, this Vrindavan status of mind is a perfection for the devotees. It is not their business to understand Krishna. They only want to love Krishna without condition. Their mentality is not, quote, because Krishna is God, therefore I love him. Krishna is not playing in Vrindavan as God. He's playing there as an ordinary cowherd boy. But at times he's proving that he's a supreme personality of Godhead. So it's very interesting. This is in 1973. Srila Prabhupada spoke this in Los Angeles. And he's speaking to very new devotees, but he's telling them, how can we study Krishna? Sometimes we think that we have to understand the philosophy, and it's so important. We speak the philosophy to understand Krishna, and the philosophy is very important. Shastra is very important. But Prabhupada's saying here that this Vrindavan state of mind, this is a real perfection. And the Brijbasis, they don't even understand that Krishna's God. So we've been speaking something about Uddhava's meeting with Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda. My Guru Maharaj called this Mathura meets Vrindavan. And we made a book based on these conversations right here. And it's the meeting between two very distant places, although seemingly Mathura is not that far away. As we often comment, Radhanath Maharaj, when he used to go to Braj, he would arrive by train to Mathura, and then he would walk from Mathura to Vrindavan. It's not such a long distance, but it's a long, long distance in another way. In terms of the conception, in terms of the mood. Whereas in Mathura, the devotees, they're analyzing Krishna. They're appreciating, oh, Krishna's creator, he's killed all these demons, therefore he should come and protect us. This is a mentality of the members of the Yadu dynasty. But for the devotees in Vrindavan, they just think that Krishna's an ordinary boy, and they just love him so much. So in our last session, we've been speaking from the 10th canto, chapter 46. We spoke something from text 42, which I'll just touch on again. Uddhava, seeing that Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda, their lamentation, he's very conscious, he's very concerned to speak to them in a way to help them, to help ease their lamentation. This is his mission from Krishna. And so saying that Nanda Maharaj was speaking about how Krishna killed the demons and Krishna embarrassed Brahma and Indra, then Uddhava is thinking, yes, I should focus on the opulence of Krishna. And so Uddhava tells them, Yuvayor Ivanaivayam Atmajo Bhagavan Hari. That you too, Yuvayo, you should understand that your son, Atmajo Bhagavan Hari, that he's Bhagavan, he's God. Sarvesham Atmajo Hyatma Pita Mata Sa Ishvara. That actually he's really not your son. Rather, Sarvesham Atmaja, he's the son of everyone, he's the father, he's the mother of everyone, he's Ishvara. He's a supreme controller. So, this we compared this to chapter 85 of the 10th canto, which is where we're ultimately going with our discussion, the meeting in Kurukshetra. But before this meeting, before there's some feelings of separation, there has to be some description of meeting. Before we can understand the feelings in Kurukshetra, we have to build up for that and see the things that happened prior to that. So in the 85th chapter, which describes a meeting in Kurukshetra, in text 18, Vasudeva, when he sees Krishna come before him, he begins to offer prayers. And he says, Yuvamna Nano Sito Sakshat Pradana Purusheshvaro. He said, actually, you're not our sons. He says the same thing that Uddhava is telling to Nanda Maharaj. But there's a big difference. Nanda Maharaj, when he heard this, he couldn't appreciate this. In Gopal Champu, Jiva Goswami describes the words of Uddhava to Nanda and Yashoda. And he says that he told them, Suto yam yuvayo eva tadik bhava yasat prabhu tada bhavatu nanye sam sadaranyad di sarvakam. That the reason why Krishna's become your son is because he's controlled by love. This is his nature. He's tadik bhava vasat prabhu. He's that prabhu who's controlled by your love. And in the absence of that love, other people can't be happy just with material love. So Uddhava is trying to glorify Nanda and Yashoda. But Uddhava is he's in the deep end of the swimming pool. And he doesn't know how to swim in Braj. Maybe he can swim in Mathura. He can associate with the devotees there. He knows their conception, their mentality. But he has no idea of the mentality of Vrindavan. And Jiva Goswami describes in Gopal Champu, in the same section, Ityudava Shri Brajarajayo Mohu Swasranu Rupam Vadato Nishagata Buddhistu Tasmin Lagur Uddhava Shisa Brajesi Tu Prema Javena Chikshipe. As Uddhava and Nanda were speaking, Vadato Nishagata, the dawn began to appear. Night was finished. But still, Uddhava, he was going on with his booty. Booty tu sasmin lagu Uddhava, which is very lagu, in comparison to the ecstatic prema of Vrajesi tu prema javena chikshipa, but the very powerful prema of Nanda Maharaj. So, in the 34th verse of the same 46th chapter, the 10th canto, Uddhava begins to give the message from Krishna to Nanda and Yashoda, seeing that his words telling him that actually Krishna's not really your son, he's Bhagavan, it didn't go over very big with Nanda and Yashoda. And we'll discuss something more about that from the book Mathura Meets Vrindavan a little bit later. So Uddhava then begins to tell Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj the message from Krishna. Agamisyatya dirgena kalena brajam achyuta priyam vidashyate pitror bhagavan sattvatam pati. He said, don't worry. Agamishyati. Krishna's going to return. Krishna promised you. He said, I'm going to return, I'm going to return. And Uddhava says, Adirgena. Dirga means a long time or something very difficult. Adirgena, it's not going to be difficult. Adirgena kalina. It's going to be a short time. Definitely, he's going to return to Braj. And when he returns, Priyam Vidashite, then he's going to give some satisfaction to everyone, and especially Pitrur, to his parents, because he's Bhagavan. He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his Sa'artha Darshani commentary on this verse, he says that in effect, Nanda Maharaj is replying to Uddhava, and he's saying, Uddhava, you're a child. My Guru Maharaj used to speak like this, that Nanda Maharaj told him, Uddhava, we thought you were very intelligent. We thought that you're Saksha Brihaspati Sishya, you're directly a disciple of Brihaspati, as Jiva Goswami says in Gopal Champu. But now I see you're a fool. You're praising us. How can you praise us? How is it you say that we're so subhagya? We're very fortunate. We're durbhagya. We're very, very unfortunate. If we're fortunate, how could we allow such a wonderful son who's full of all good qualities to leave us and go somewhere else? If you say we're fortunate, we're just the opposite of fortunate. We're the most unfortunate. There's no one as unfortunate as us in all the three worlds. No one more degraded, more miserable. Everyone will condemn us. So anticipating this statement from Nanda Maharaj, Uddhava speaks this verse. That don't worry, Agamishyata Dirgina Kalina, that Krishna is very soon going to return. He's a Chuta. A Chuta means one who's infallible. One who won't break his promise. So definitely he's going to come here. He's going to fulfill all your desires. Jiva Goswami, in his Laghu Vaishnava Toshani, he says that although Uddhava was trying his hardest to pacify Nanda and Yashoda, still they didn't become peaceful. Rather, when they heard about the qualities of Krishna, when they heard Krishna being praised by Uddhava, it broke their hearts. Their hearts became full of pain. And then seeing him in that condition, then Uddhava began to speak. He was touched by their misery. And Uddhava began to tell him, no, Krishna promised you. He said, Ayasya, I'm going to return. Krishna promised several times. When Nanda was leaving, when Krishna was leaving Vrindavan, he told the gopis, Ayasya, and then I'm going to return. Then again, when Krishna was staying in Mathura and Nanda Maharaj is returning, at that time, Krishna told him also, I'm going to come very, very quickly. Don't worry, I'm going to return. Uddhava goes on. He says, Hatva kangsam ragamadye pratipam sarvasatvatam yad ahava samagatya Krishna satyam kodoti tat. He uses this word satyam. Satya means truth. But satyam, the Amarakosh, says also another meaning of satya is a promise, is a vow. So he says, Hatva Kangsam, now that he's killed Kangsa, that definitely this promise that he made you, that Samagacha, he's going to return, Satyam Kodoti, definitely Krishna will fulfill his promise. Jiva Goswami in Laghu Vaishnava Toshani, he says that Nanda Maharaj tells Uddhava, we're sorry Uddhava, but we don't believe it. We don't believe that Krishna is going to return. And so seeing that, then Uddhava speaks this verse, that no, Hatva Kangsam Ragamadya, there in that wrestling arena, Krishna killed Kangsa. He killed the enemy. So Samagatya, this promise that he made that he's going to come back, Satyam Kodoti, it's going to be true. Have no doubt about it. The word Kodoti, Jiva Goswami says, the grammar is used in a present tense. Vishwanath also comments on this, that meaning it's going to happen in the very near future. It's not something that's going to happen later on. It's going to happen very, very quickly. And Vishwanath, he says in his commentary that Krishna's telling him, Uddhava is telling him, that after he's killed Kamsa, after killing Kamsa and meeting there on the edge of Mathura, Krishna promised, you return to Braj, and we're also going to come very quickly there. So he's saying Krishna, he's using the word karoti. Krishna's certainly doing this. He's present tense. He's coming right now. But another meaning, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, is that actually Krishna's already here. And to look back in some of our previous discussion, we touched on a very long purport of Vishwanath, one of his longest purports, I think, in the entire Bhagavatam, where he says a very astonishing thing, that actually Krishna returned to Vrindavan with Nanda Maharaj. Krishna expanded himself, and in one form, he stayed in Mathura to pacify the members of the Yadu dynasty, to kill the demons, Paritranaya sadhanam, vinashaya chadushkitam, dharma samstarpanartaya sambhavama yugege, to kill the demons, to protect the devotees, to establish religion. Krishna stayed there for all those purposes. But at the same time, Krishna also returned to Vrindavan. We haven't heard this. To review a little bit on that. Krishna expanded himself in two forms. There were two forms of Balaram, two forms of Krishna. One form of each stayed in Mathura, and the other form returned with Nanda Maharaj. But we don't hear that. In the same way that Krishna expanded himself, he also made other forms of Nanda Maharaj and all the cowherd boys. He made two chariots, and one chariot returned to Vrindavan with Krishna and Balaram and all the boys, and the other chariot, Nanda Maharaj and the boys returned to Vrindavan alone. And in this way, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that there are two compartments in Vrindavan. Well, this is a very important point in our discussion about the meeting in Kurukshetra and how Kurukshetra relates to Jagannath Puri. This, as we were speaking in some of our previous sessions, this is, in my humble opinion, the most important subject in the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's the greatest mystery in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Prior to Krishna Konsesha is trying to call you.
It's open. You should just...
I don't know, but anyways, he's calling on the phone.
I'm recording, just leave it here, stop.
Okay, I'll turn it off. The biggest mystery in Srimad Bhagavatam is how is it possible, not that he left, but how is it possible that Krishna left? How do we understand that Krishna left Vrindavan? And Vishwanath gives one answer, which we touched on previously, which was that just as a goldsmith melts gold to show the purity of gold, so in a similar way, Krishna applies Vipralamba Agni, or the fire, the heat of separation, to melt the hearts of the Brijbasis and especially the gopis, to prove to the world, to show to the world the greatness of their love. So this is one purpose that Krishna accomplished by leaving Vrindavan. But in a very deep way, he never actually left Vrindavan. And that subject matter was never discussed by anyone. No one could understand that topic until Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came, until Rupa Goswami advented, and Sanatana Goswami. And Rupa Goswami gave us his Lalita Madhav, and Sanatana Goswami gave us Brihad Bhagavatamrita, and Raghunath Das Goswami gave us Mukta Charit. In these literatures, there's a description given of how it is that Krishna left Vrindavan. And in a very deep way, in a way which would take much longer than we want to go into in this session today, in Lalita Madhav, Rupa Goswami indicates that actually Krishna never left. And explaining that in a deep way, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his Sarta Darshani, he gives us explanation. And so here in this verse, Vishwanath looks back on this. He says that Uddhava, he's telling Nanda and Yashoda that he's using this word karoti. Karoti is present tense. And karoti, Jiva says that it means that Krishna is going to return very soon. But in another sense, the word karoti is present tense, meaning he's already here now. This is the mystery of Srimad Bhagavatam. Pratishloki, pratyakshi, nanartakoi. Every verse, every syllable of Srimad Bhagavatam has unlimited meaning. But to understand that, we have to hear from the devotees. We have to hear from our acharyas. So in the 36th verse of this 46th chapter, 10th canto, Uddhava now, he again turns to Gyan to try to console Nanda and Yashoda. He sees that, looking at them, he sees, okay, I tried telling them some sweet things, that Krishna can't forget you, he loves you. And then he says, he sees that doesn't work. So then he tells them, don't worry. He says that Krishna satyam karoti, samagatya Krishna satyam karoti. That very soon, right now, he's here. Don't have any doubt. He sees that didn't work with Nanda and Yashoda. So again, he turns back to the information that he's gotten from Brihaspati. He's a great disciple of Brihaspati. He says, Ma kedyatam mahabhago drakshata krishnam antike antarhidi sabhutanam aste jyotir ivadasi. He says, don't lament. You're going to see Krishna very, very soon. And you should understand, actually, you're Mahabhaga. You're very fortunate. Therefore, Makidyatam, don't lament. Because Drakshata, you're going to see Krishna. And he says, Antike, in the very near future. And then he says some very deep things. Antarhidi sabhutanam. You should know that Krishna's antar. He's antarhidi. He's in the heart. Antarhidi sabhutanam. Of all living entities. Ashte jyotir ivadasi. Just like fire is present within firewood. So this is a subtle continuation of the previous point where this word karoti was used, which is our acharyas are described as present tense. Before our acharyas come, before Jiva Goswami, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explained this, who could understand? Who could understand why? It seems like bad grammar. He's giving a message. He's telling Krishna's going to come. Krishna's in Mathura. Why are you saying karoti? Krishna's here right now. There's a very deep purport. And by bringing out the meaning of that word karoti, then in the next text, we're just reading now, text 36, we can understand this text. Without understanding the word karoti, that Krishna's present right now, the next text doesn't actually make so much sense. Uddhava is telling Nanda and Yashoda that he's in everyone's heart, he's present everywhere. Jiva Goswami and Laghu Vaishnava Toshan, this verse says that Nanda and Yashoda, when they heard Jiva Goswami, they heard Uddhava saying that Samagatya, Krishna Satyam, definitely Satyam, Krishna's taken a promise, it's the truth, Krishna's going to return. Nanda and Yashoda, they couldn't tolerate that. And so then Uddhava uses the word karoti. Actually, he's already present. And then he goes on in this verse, Antarhidi sabhutanamashi jyotirivadasi, that he's already present everywhere. He's already with you. So don't lament. When Uddhava, Jiva says, told Nanda and Yashoda that Krishna's going to return, Yashoda gave him a glance. It wasn't a very happy glance. What do you mean he's going to return? Where's the proof of this? You're just trying to console us. So Uddhava, he saw that glance from Mother Yashoda, and therefore he addressed him as Mahabhago. You're very, very fortunate. Don't think you're not fortunate. Because Uddhava then became afraid, saying that they couldn't tolerate even a slight delay in Krishna's coming. Uddhava was thinking actually that it's possible that Nanda and Yashoda may just die. I've never seen such intensity of love and separation. So I can see they can't tolerate even a little delay in Krishna's coming. So then Uddhava began to speak to them some philosophy, which is a traditional way to relieve someone of lamentation. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur elaborates on the discussion. He says that Nanda Maharaj is saying We're so unfortunate that Krishna, who would never give us up, and Krishna always tells the truth, now he's delayed in returning to Braj. And then Uddhava says, no, don't lament. You're going to see Krishna right away. And then Nanda Maharaj says, what are you saying? You're saying we're going to see Krishna, but when is that going to happen? Is it going to be tomorrow? Is it going to be the next day? Is it going to be 10 days from now? If you tell us that factually, with that consolation, we might be able to keep our life heirs from leaving our body until that day. But if Krishna's not coming, this word satya has this purport also. The word satya in the previous verse. You're saying satya, that Krishna's being honest, but Nanda's saying that you should tell us the truth. If he's not coming, just tell us. And then we can die. And our pain will go away. But our situation is so intolerable. We can't live and we can't die. We can't live without our Gopal. But at the same time, we can't die because you're coming and telling us he's going to return. Because Krishna told us, Ayasya. So then how can we die? If we die, it'll cause pain to Krishna's heart. Uddhava, Vishwanath says that when Uddhava heard Nanda Maharaj speaking like this, he's become very confused. This is very difficult. I've been a counselor for a long time, but I've never had to counsel someone like this. What kind of advice can I give them? He said, if they were suffering, he's thinking to himself, if they were suffering in separation from an ordinary mundane son, then I could enlighten them and tell them, Dehinosmin yata dehe komaram yovanam jara, that you're not the body, he's not really your son. Don't be an illusion attached to your family like this. This attachment to wife and children, that's the cause of all your problems. Give that up and attach yourself to the Lord. He said, but how can I say this to Nanda, who's attached to Krishna as his son? And he said, Uddhava is thinking about all this, very intelligent. Uddhava is thinking, he's not like Vasudeva. When Vasudeva saw that Krishna killed Kamsa, when Vasudeva saw the power of Krishna, his love for Krishna became weakened. As Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami describes in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Aishvarya Priti Sankuchita. That this Aishvarya, this knowledge of Krishna's opulence and power, Priti Sankuchita. It makes love shrink. So this was the nature of Vasudeva's love, Uddhava was thinking. But when I see Nanda and Yashoda, when I speak to them about the power of Krishna, then their attachment becomes even stronger. And they start thinking that even the parents of an ordinary son die out of misery if they can't see him any longer. And by our good fortune, Krishna was playing in our house as our son. We lament, we suffer if we can't see Krishna and hold him on our lap for even one moment. How are we going to live without seeing Krishna in our home? We're durbhagya, durbhagya, durbhagya. We're so unfortunate being separated from Krishna. Uddhava is thinking like this. But then Uddhava is thinking, on the other hand, when Vasudeva and Devaki realized the Aishvarya, the opulent position of Krishna, they started thinking, he's not our son, he's a worshipable Lord, and then they wouldn't embrace him. So he thought, this knot of possessiveness is tied very tightly for Nanda and Yashoda. But he thought Krishna has strong possessiveness of them as well, even though he's Bhagavan. He said, I saw Krishna's concern and love for them. When he said, go to Braj, make my father and mother happy, remove the pain of separation from the Braj gopis, he spoke like this. And then Uddhava said, I heard there must have been some people coming from Vrindavan. I heard previously when I was in Mathura that someone must have come, and they spoke some of the words of what Nanda Maharaj had said previously. And previously, Nanda Maharaj, he had told, he'd spoken about how Krishna lifted Govardhan Hill and how Krishna is so wonderful and so powerful. So, Nanda Maharaj is thinking, Uddhava is thinking, I can go to Mathura, I can bring Krishna here tomorrow. But there's a problem with that. It's not going to work. Jarasandha is very, very angry because his two daughters, Asti and Prapti, they married Krishna. They married Kamsa. Asti and Prapti married Kamsa, and Krishna killed Kamsa. And so they're widows. So Jarasandha is going to be so angry, and he'll go and fight against Mathura. And if I take Krishna away, and Krishna comes here, then who's going to protect Vasudeva and Devaki and the members of the Yadu dynasty? And then again, if Krishna comes here and then later he goes back to Mathura to protect them, then definitely I can see the Brijbasis are going to die. Now, if I tell the Brijbasis that Krishna's going to come, it'll be maybe 4 or 5 years. They're not going to live that long. If I lie and tell them that Krishna's going to come in 4 or 5 days, then when the 4 or 5 days are gone and they understand that I lied to them, then they're also going to die. Uddhava has such a problem. What can I do? He thought to himself, Vishwanath says, that the only solution I have to weaken their prema by speaking some philosophy. So I'm going to tell them that he's a super soul, that Krishna's indifferent to everyone, he's Brahman, he has no relationships with birth, with father, mother, and I'm going to speak to them about the nature of the Jivatma. But if after hearing that, Nanda and Yashoda's unlimited love for Krishna remains unchecked and maybe it increases, then what can I do? I'll return to Mathura, and all that I can do is I'm going to glorify their love again and again in front of Krishna, in front of Vasudeva and Ugrasena and the others. So thinking like this and meditating on Krishna, Uddhava began to speak, as we just said, about Krishna as being the super soul. So this is part of the important purport of Uddhava meeting Nanda Maharaj, and we spoke quite a bit in previous sessions about how Uddhava is a messenger of Krishna. But he's not only the messenger of Krishna. Uddhava is a bridge between two different worlds. The world of Gyan and Aishvarya, of knowledge that Krishna is Bhagavan in Mathura, and the world of Vrindavan, where no one tries to judge Krishna. No one tries to understand Krishna. They simply love him as their son. Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda, they're blowing Uddhava's mind. And Uddhava, so astonished at this, he thought, my purpose in coming here was to give a message, but now I see I have another purpose. Krishna told me also he wanted me to repeat the words of Nanda and Yashoda, but I'm not just going to repeat their words. I have to come and I have to convey their intense love. So what does this indicate? What is so important about Uddhava Sandesh, where Rupa Goswami has written an entire book? What is so important about Hansadut? Again, speaking about Uddhava's meeting with Nanda and Yashoda. Why is Jiva Goswami spoke so much about this in Gopal Champu? Why is Sanatan Goswami given this discussion in Brihad Bhagavatamrita? Why has Rupa Goswami spoken these things in Lita Madhav? Because all of this discussion indicates and helps us to understand Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Uddhava is the messenger. He's bringing back that love of Braj. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in the same mood, he's also bringing us that love of Vrindavan. Krishna himself is coming and doing that. So Uddhava is telling Nanda and Yashoda that just as fire is in wood, Krishna's in the hearts of all living entities. So just as fire is not, it's interesting, Vishwanath says in analogy here, that when Uddhava is telling Krishna that asti jyotirivadisi, that just as fire is in firewood, he's indicating something else also. How does that fire come out of the wood? Well, there has to be some friction. When there's friction between two pieces of wood, then the fire appears. So in the same way, he's saying that Krishna is also not visible without devotion. So when Nanda and Yashoda hear this, they say, what is this? Uddhava is telling us that we should do bhakti, just like the Vaishnavas do for Krishna. So if we do that, maybe he'll appear in our house. So, okay, very good. Then we should do bhakti. We should practice bhakti like the Vaishnavas do. And that way maybe Krishna may appear in our home. After Uddhava returned to Mathura, Nanda Maharaj and the cowherd men were crying. And they told Uddhava, Manaso Brittayo Nasyu Krishna Padam Bhajashrayaha Vacho Bidyanir Nam Nam Kayas Tat Prayavadishu. They prayed to Uddhava. This was the last words we'll hear later in this chapter. When Uddhava returned to Mathura, Uddhava, Nanda Maharaj at that time told him, they addressed him as a very fortunate personality. And he said, Manaso Brittayo Nasyu, may our minds rest Krishna Padam Bhu, on the lotus feet of Krishna. Vacha Bidaniyir Namna, may our voices always sing his names. And Kayas Tat Pavanadishu, may our bodies always offer him respects. So indirectly here, isn't it? The Srimad Bhagavatam is indirectly indicating Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. How our minds, Krishna says in the Gita, Mamana Bhavamad Bhakto Madhyaji Mam Namaskar. You should think of me, offer obeisances to me. But Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami says it didn't work because Krishna is a theoretical speaker. He says in Chaitanya Charitamrita that without a practical example, it's not going to work. Krishna says, Sarva Dharmam Prityagamami Kam Sharanam Braja. And when he says the word Braja, my Guru Maharaj said, at that time he remembered Vrindavan and Bhagavad Gita stopped. He couldn't speak any more philosophy at that time. So Krishna is a theoretical speaker, but a practical example was required. As Nanda Maharaj is saying here, may our minds, manaso brittayo, may our minds rest Krishna Padambu, on the lotus feet of Krishna. Vacha Badaniyir, may our voices always sing his names, and may our bodies always offer him respects. Who is the embodiment of that? That's Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Krishna came, he spoke in theoretical way in Bhagavad Gita, but he had to come again to set a practical example. So I'm going to stop here, and I want to thank all the devotees, Sanjay Prabhu, and Bana Biharani. I hope it's not too late for you there. I hope it's not too cold. We were hearing about the terrible cold in Michigan. And Brinda Sundari in Denver, I think it must be really cold there too. And Mala Prabhu and Antaryami Prabhu, nice to see you here. And Francisco Mataji, nice to see you. From Chile, I think, right? And Radhika Raman Prabhu, Hare Krishna. And Manju Krishna Prabhu, is he here in the room? Yeah, okay. He's also here on Facebook. He's like Krishna, he's all pervading. And Natalia in Estonia, Hare Krishna. And Uddhava Rasagya Mataji in North Carolina, nice to see you. And Bipin. Hare Krishna. Bipin makes some comment. Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Radhe Krishna, Jai Jai Jagannath Bhagavan Ki Jai Ho. Prabhupada Bhagavan, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Hare. Ujjvala Rasagya Mataji offers a comment here. She says, these Brijbasi, Premi Bhaktas, and Uddhava are in two different worlds of their own reality, even though they're sitting together and seeing each other. Like two different people tasting two completely different dishes, though dining together. What a beautiful analogy. And it's a very important concept also for us to understand. It's a very simple, rather mundane purport we can get from this meeting of Uddhava and Nanda Maharaj. physical proximity doesn't mean association. And we should always deeply remember that, especially in our dealings with devotees, with the Vaishnavas. How do we come close to the Vaishnavas? We come close to them, Daitava Pachi Pachi, by running after him, Krishna Krishna Boli, by calling out Krishna's name, by doing Nam Bhajan. Then we'll come close to Gurudev. Then we'll come close to the Vaishnavas. But otherwise we may be sitting right next to them and be just as if we're millions of miles away. Uddhava Rasiga Mataji goes on, how in the world can we taste the dish of a Brij Basi without them giving a little bit of it to us? Yes, it's required. And that giving is done by Nityananda Prabhu. Nityananda, my Guru Maharaj used to say that Nitai, one of the meanings of Nitai means take this, take this. So Nitai is coming and he's giving this Braj Bhav to us. He's doing it because Nityananda Prabhu is Adi Guru. He's doing it through the form of Guru. Bani Biharani comments, it's 8:50 at night here, not too late for us. Good. You should take rest at a decent time. And Sanjay Prabhu says, thank you very much for the nice discussion, Prabhuji. The two chambers you mentioned, are they Goloka Vrindavan and Boma Vrindavan? I don't want to try to say that because that's not mentioned. But there are two chambers, and my Guru Maharaj also spoke about two chambers of Vrindavan, the chamber of union and the chamber of separation. And he said that this chamber of separation, this is Jagannath Puri Dham. Therefore, Jagannath Puri Dham is non-different from Vrindavan, but this is the chamber of separation in Vrindavan. Brindasundari, Mataji's commented, interesting how Uddhava was like a bridge. Could you elaborate further? Is it that he represents Gyan or knowledge, and how can it be a bridge to the transcendental realm? But it seems we still have to have bhakti that grows also. So Uddhava is a bridge, not just because he has some theoretical information that Krishna's God, not just because he read Bhagavad Gita and memorized a few verses. That doesn't give him entrance into Vrindavan. But his entrance into Vrindavan is by the mercy of Guru. And the Adi Guru in this case is Krishna himself. And we spoke about that in some of our previous sessions, how by the order of Krishna, Uddhava was able to enter into Vrindavan. By the order of Guru only can we enter into Vrindavan. So that order is coming with Uddhava. And we spoke also about that, how the trees were giving fruits on the way to Uddhava because they saw Krishna. They saw the order of Krishna in Uddhava. And so in the same way, when the disciple carries that order of Guru, then all good fortune is with such a disciple. So Uddhava is a bridge in the sense that he's coming from Mathura, and he's carrying his conception. And he's carrying with him the conception of the residents of Mathura. And therefore Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that he's thinking of Vasudeva and Devaki and their conception. And what he's going to go back and tell them, and my God. So he's a bridge. He's bringing that conception of Vasudeva and Devaki. He's bringing the conception of Ugrasena. He's bringing the conception of the residents of Mathura. He's bringing what he's heard from his guru Brihaspati. That again is not his only qualification. His qualification is the order of Krishna. And now he's going to go and bring that. So this is Mathura meets Vrindavan. But then Vrindavan is going to meet Mathura also. That's Hansadut. When that message of Vrindavan goes back to Mathura. Okay. So thank you very much for this, Sundari. It's so nice that you take part in this. I really appreciate your thoughtful comments. Now I'd like to turn to the devotees here in the room. We have a few guests and devotees here in the room. If anybody here has any reflections or comments, anything, Prabhuji? Anything you could say?
After reading this class, I am just inspired to hear all the 42 lectures. I have this book, Mathura Meets Vrindavan, but I never read this book. I just kept it in my reading list, but now I will try to go through this book as soon as possible.
That makes me very, very happy. Then our kata has some success if we can get one person to read our Guru Maharaj's book. Anybody else here? Any reflections? Prabhuji, can you stand up maybe over here and speak toward the mic so they can hear? Thank you, Krishna. So Says Madhya Krishna Prabhu are very learned.
Actually, I'm so happy. So when during this discussion, I think how like Krishna Balaram is coming from Vrindavan, is Mathura to Vrindavan, on the way this pastimes is going on. I'm fully observing such pastimes. So sweet, bro. Thank you very much. Very nice discussion. Very. So you
You know, when you commented this, it made me think of something else. That Vishwanath says that Krishna and Balaram expanded, and they came with Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda. But your comment made me think of another way that Krishna's coming to Vrindavan. He's coming with Uddhava. Uddhava is carrying Krishna in the form of that Vani, that message, which is not different from Krishna. And that Vani is not just information, that don't worry, I'm going to return, but it's the love of Krishna. And this is Guru. He's not just carrying information. He's not just Konafanka Guru. What do you say in Oriya? Not just spitting in your ear, giving some mantra or some gyan, some information, but he's giving this bhav. Thank you, Prabhu. Anything else from anybody? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and stop there. Next week, I'm not sure when we're going to speak because we have a parikrama coming to Puri, and I think next Sunday we'll be taking part with that parikrama, but we will have at least one online class sometime during that time. So I want to thank everybody very much for taking part in this. This is our life. If we don't have Srimad Bhagavatam, we don't hear about these things, we're just dead bodies. We need to come together and hear and speak about Srimad Bhagavatam. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Samaveda Bhakta Binda ki jai, Vancha